Hey, it's Golden Buddha here, and today we continue the story of E.S.R.T, Cops in the Dark Future. And in this session, well, you know what? Let's just get into it. So, after the whole Taco Bell fiasco, we cut to Arthur and Miller, sitting in their squad car, debating what to do. And Arthur, he's like, well, we should call Lucas's job. Because Lucas, the dad of the son we're trying to find, works for Biotechnica, which is a corporation that deals with a lot of, like, gene splicing and a bunch of other stuff. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Arthur tells Chris, he's like, hey, I'm gonna call his job. What do I roll for? And so at this, Chris is like, no, you're not rolling for anything. He's like, okay, well, hello, Biotechnica Services, who is this? And how may I help you? Yeah, so I'm looking for the father of this guy. And so at this point, like, Arthur's player has, like, forgotten, like, the names of everybody. Like, he doesn't remember Bethany. He doesn't remember Lucas's name. He's like, hey guys, what was the dad's name again? And so I blurt out, I'm like, hey, it was Lucas, you know, because I have my little notes here. I usually take notes. After that, I mute my mic and I go to do stuff in my house. I had to go put my son to bed and all that stuff. They're going over this. He's talking. Arthur's like, oh yeah, and he starts talking with this receptionist. And so the receptionist is like, that's too vague. I don't know who in relation to what. Like, basically the receptionist is trying to figure out what this guy's talking about. And so then Arthur blurts out, he's like, oh yeah, what was the exec's name? And of course somebody says, like, oh, it's Bethany. So, oh yeah, we're looking for Bethany Songthuk's kid. And so the receptionist is like, what? Bethany Songthuk as a kid? And so, you know, they hear, like, people in the call, like, you know, her, like, asking people, like, come over and stuff. So she's immediately gossiping about this or telling one of her higher ups. That was the first ball we dropped right there. So yeah, at that point, they're talking and chatting and stuff, which is, again, very unprofessional for a receptionist. And so Arthur's like, hey, well, can you still help me? And she's like, well, I don't know what Mr. Lucas does on his off time, sorry. And, you know, kind of hangs up. And so they talk about that for a bit. And I come back. And I'm like, hey, what's up, guys? What happened? You know, kind of just told me the whole situation. I was like, I was gone for 5 minutes. How did this happen? We weren't supposed to tell people that she had a son. And so I'm sitting here flabbergasted. This was in the same session, right? Not even 20 minutes after we got that information that she wanted us to keep this under wraps, right? Again, I guess everybody didn't want to be like that guy and, you know, hop in and, like, interrupt his scene, which would have been rude. But either way, the ball was dropped. It's just like, well, going forward now. So after that little debacle, Arthur and Miller start driving to the Darkwood Apartments, which is where Lucas stays, right? They get there and they find that this place, it's kind of run down, to be honest. It's not like combat zone run down, but it's like getting there. It's a pretty rough place. And it seems very odd that a corporate, or that a guy who has, like, a solid job in Biotechnica would be living here. You know, we kind of go over that and, like, you know, think about that. So from that exchange, though, we find out that he's not at work. And so the gears in my head are turning. And I'm just like, well, we know he's not at work. But if he's not at work, me and Ice could still go there and check it out. Maybe see what's in his desk, talk to some of his associates, see what kind of personality this guy has. You know, what kind of person he is, how people think of him. And so Chris is like, you know what? All right. Jet and Ice start driving their way to the Biotechnica office where Lucas works. Meanwhile, we cut to Takeda. Now, Takeda has been, like, sitting on his motorcycle, kind of just, like, listening in on the communicators, doing whatever, getting ready to go. And so a small gang, like, of dudes start to, like, form around him, because, you know, he's a cop, but he's got, like, a really nice bike. You know, this is Night City. Everybody's fair game in Night City. Cops aren't immune to getting jumped. They see you with the vest on, they're like, damn, I could really use that vest. how about you go ahead and get that up? That's the kind of world that Night City is in. That's the type of world that 2020 is. They form around him, kind of menacingly. So Takeda just hops off the bike, clicks the alarm, bloop, and turns around and talks to these guys. Hey, you know who Jack is? Hey, do you know Caleb? Meanwhile, the gangers, they're just like, nah, do we look like we hang out with a motherfucker named Caleb? Takeda, he's like, alright, I want to roll human perception to see if they're lying. And so he rolls it. Boom. 24. Chris, he's like, it seems like he's lying, especially about knowing Caleb. So then Takeda's like, alright, cool. What's your name? And then one of the guys' homeboys, like, jumps in. He's like, hey man, he ain't got to tell you his name. He told you, motherfucker, he don't know the dude's name. You got somewhere to be? And so Takeda, he's like, yeah, I got somewhere to be. Right here, asking you questions about Caleb and Jack. So Takeda puts down his visor and his heads-up display comes on. Warrant, 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 warrant to everybody in front of him. All of these gangers. And so the guy immediately in front of him, he finds out that his name on the heads-up display is Stanley Beatrix, or some lame shit like that. Basically, they was talking shit about, oh, would I hang with a dude named Caleb, but yet here's Stanley hanging back. Okay. Anyways, he's wanted for like larceny and Grand Theft Auto. So Takeda sees this and he's like, oh yeah, no, I need to know where Caleb and Jack are, Stanley. And so at that, Stanley, he's like, boom, tries to dip. Takeda's like, nah, I'm grabbing him. So Chris says, well, roll it. Boom, rolls the dice. He gets a 28 because this man's got like 10 in reflex, plus 6, plus whatever. I think he crit or some shit too. So, Chris is like, God damn, well, he's not getting away. You got him. And so Takeda's like, all right, great. I'm going to put him in a half Nelson and try to interrogate him. And so then Chris is like, well, wait, his friend, comes out because, he's like, oh, help me, man. He tries to, push Takeda off of him. And so Takeda rolls to intimidate the guy with his authority. Boom, rolls it. 26! The ganger's friend kind of just throws his hands up. He's like, hey, bro, you got it. Actually, I didn't even want any part of this. And Takeda's like, no, what you're going to do, you're going to sit your ass right there. Otherwise, you're going to get what Stanley just got. And so he's like, all right, cool, bro. All right, say less. Eventually, the guy who's grappled, he starts spilling the beans. Hey, I ain't seen Caleb in a couple months after he started fucking around with the ROH. And so Takeda's like, ROH? And so he starts to cuff the ganger so he can kind of interrogate him more. Then we cut to Jet and Ice at the Biotechnica lobby. So they've made it to Lucas's place of work. So when Jet and Ice get there, the place is pretty busy. There's security guards running around. There's office workers trying to get to and fro. Secretaries talking on their phones. There's also metal detectors in the place as well. There's also a long ass line to the reception desk. Now, us being cops and us having a case to solve, we're obviously not going to wait in line, so Jet kind of motions over to Ice, and so they start walking to the front of the line. And then some guy, some office worker, some exec, some random Joe Schmo hops out of the line, and he's like, hey man, I know you guys are cops and all, but I've been waiting here for hours, and that's fucked up what y'all are doing. And so then Ice's player is like, oh, well, maybe I could roll persuasion on him. Meanwhile, I'm just like, no, fuck this guy. Let's just keep walking. What? Like, who is he? Like, as far as we know, he's just some guy who's waiting in line. Like, what is he gonna do? Stop us? And also, he was the only guy who hopped out of the line to, like, kind of say something. That just kind of made him look like an asshole. So I'm just like, yeah, let's just keep moving forward. Boom, ignore him. We don't need to reference him. Because sometimes that's the best way. Sometimes you just gotta ignore the haters, okay? And just keep moving forward. So then the whole line starts murmuring. They're just like, oh man, this is bullshit. Oh man, they couldn't. And I'm just like, okay. Alright, is no one gonna do anything? Okay then. If ain't nobody gonna box, alright then. Let them talk. So then we get to the front desk. There's this 20-something-year-old Asian man at the front. How may I help you, officers? Of course, we reply with the, hey, we're looking for Lucas Anderson. Is he in? Do you have any idea about his whereabouts right now? And of course, he goes through the schedule, he goes through the call logs, and ultimately he says, hey, I don't know his office number, I'm sorry. Now, me and Ice know that's both bullshit. Jet's like, alright, I'm gonna try to interrogate him. So, he's like, hey, a man's life may hang in the balance. You need to give us this information now. And so then Ice chimes in, he's like, do you really want this man's blood on your shoulders? You better tell us what we need to know. And so then Arthur's player chimes in and says, how would the blood end up on his shoulders? And at this point I'm like, hey, don't think about it too hard, man. We're just trying to pressure the guy. He gets what we're saying. We get what we're saying. He gets what we're saying. The meaning is understood. Eventually, he gives us the info. Lucas Anderson works in the humanoid sector, Building 4 in the Hive. We thank him for his information, and we start heading there. Meanwhile, we cut back to Arthur and Miller. They're at the Darkwoods apartments, and they knock on a door. Who is it? And so Arthur pipes up, sir, we're just trying to find Caleb Anderson, your son. And so the door opens, and he's like, hey man, he's grown, he can do what he wants. And so Arthur says, well, your ex-wife is looking for him. She's worried about him. And he's like, oh, what does that bitch want? Why is she interfering now? Why does she suddenly want to be a part of her son's life now? Despite this guy being very abrasive, Arthur stays professional through the whole time. And Miller just kind of posts up, kind of watching, waiting to see what happens. So Chris calls for the roll. He says, hey, roll persuasion. He rolls it. Boom. 17. Unfortunately, that's not enough to persuade Mr. Anderson. He proceeds to tell them, oh, you're just cronies. The fact that she thinks she could just do this and get away with it is complete bullshit. She's got the cops on her payroll. I'm surprised she didn't send over some leg breakers and all that shit. Arthur's just like, yo, we're not cronies. We're not goons. We are cops. We are officers of the law, and we are trying to find a missing person. And it seems like you don't care a whole bunch about your son right now. And then Lucas, he's like, you know what? Again, he's grown. He can do what the fuck he wants. He starts to shut the door on the two officers, but Miller jams his foot into the door frame, stopping the door from closing. And Arthur leans into the door and says, you know what? The more you are uncooperative with us, the more and more it seems like you're a suspect in this. And so at that, Lucas says, hey, remove your foot from my door, and I suggest you come back with a warrant, if that's the case. Miller slowly removes his foot from the door as they hear like this young female voice from inside the apartment. Who's that? Don't worry about it, it's just the cops. And so the door closes. And Miller and Arthur, they kind of look at each other and they're just like, oh, that's got to be the other daughter that Bethany told us about. Because as you know, Lucas had other kids. Immediately, Arthur gets on the phone and calls dispatch. He's like, dispatch, I need a warrant. So dispatch is like, okay, what's the warrant for? Lucas is being uncooperative with our questioning and we want the warrant to question him. And they're like, okay, well, what's this warrant going to be based on? Arthur's player starts kind of fumbling over his words because we don't have a reason to get a warrant for this guy specifically. Basically, he started to say like, oh, we have reason to suspect him as a murderer in this case. And I'm just like, no, we don't. Hang up the phone. Then Miller instead tries to call a judge so that they can get a warrant to search the place, which makes way more sense than just saying the dad is a suspect, which he's not at this point. After that exchange, we cut back to Takeda. Takeda's moved Stanley to the curb, and now he's interrogating him, pressing him for answers. So of course, Chris is like, hey, roll interrogation. Boom, he rolls it. Rolls a 10, plus whatever bonus is 24, and plus with a 10 it explodes, so boom, rolls again, gets a 6. So it's a total of 30. With a roll like that, Stanley starts singing like Beyonce, telling Takeda everything he needs to know about ROH. Or everything that Stanley knows about ROH, should I say. We find out that ROH is actually like a militant arm of the Church of Human Love, and that Caleb started to fall in with them In fact, he started buying into their anti-augmentation rhetoric, especially after his sister Tanya got into a car accident and had to get a cyber arm replacement. He tells Takeda about Jack. Oh yeah, and Jack, he's fallen in with ROH too. He mostly spends a lot of time down at the arcade with brain dances, stuck in VR basically. So Takeda's like, well, tell me where the arcade is, where we can find him, and I'll see what I can do to help. And Takeda also mentions, hey, you have outstanding warrants. I have to arrest you. And so Stanley's like, oh man, come on, man. I helped. I told you what you needed to know. And he's like, I appreciate that. I do. Law's the law. And I will tell them you were compliant and that you helped assist in the investigation. And you'll probably just get a slap on the wrist, to be honest. And so Stanley, he starts going in about he starts talking a little bit about his life. He's like, man, I got 2 kids. And my baby mama, she not strong enough for Night City, and we've been trying to move east, get the hell out of here. Okay, so Takeda's player actually deals in law enforcement in real life. So he's probably had this conversation before. It could have been a really emotional scene. But the rest of us were acting like jackasses. Oh shit, he want to know where the kids are so he can arrest them too. Oh shit, why are they moving out east? There's nothing out there but wasteland. Oh, Takeda, he gonna try to karate chop baby mama. Just stupid jokes that didn't need to be made, but we said them anyways, whatever. So then at that point, Miller and Arthur arrive on the scene. They make their way back to Takeda. And so Arthur's like, okay, what did you find out, Takeda? Takeda gives him the info. Arthur's like, well, what do we do with this guy? And he's like, oh, we're just gonna book him for what he's wanted for, and that's about it. And so they do the whole thing. Arthur's like, hey, do you have any weapons on you? Nah, man. Do you have any drugs on you? I got a couple of slappers. He's just like, oh, well, that's illegal. I'm gonna need to take that. And so Takeda's like, but we're not booking him for the slappers. Remember, we're leaving that out. And so then at this point, Arthur is like, oh man, my bad, my apologies, sir. Here, take your slappers back. And it's just like, wait, no, don't give the criminal back the drugs. We're just saying we're not gonna book him for the drugs. Don't give him back the drugs. We're taking the drugs. After that funny scene, we cut back to Jet and Ice. Now they've made their way to Hive 4. And they're inside the reception area for that office building. They walk into that thing with a purpose. Jet makes his way up to the receptionist desk and slams his cyber arm onto the counter. My partner and I are in the middle of an investigation. We need access to Lucas Anderson's office, and we need it yesterday. The receptionist says, whoa, wait, he's not in. Okay, that's not what I asked. And so at that point, the receptionist says, we can't just allow you access into the offices without the proper documentation, so I will need you to fill out some forms, please. So he hands me and Ice the forms. And at this point, Ice is like, oh yes, this is my moment. This is my time to shine. And everyone, they're just kind of like, what is he talking about? What is he saying? Turns out, this man put like 2 points into composition, which is your writing skill in the game. Because Ice isn't a cop. I mean, he's a cop, but his role, his class, if you want to call it that, is a media. He has skills that we don't have as cops, that the class cop has. So he has points in like interview. He has points in like composition for writing papers and reports or songs or whatever else. More points in like oratory and credibility, which makes him more believable. He takes the papers and he's like, Jet, don't worry about this. I got it. So he rolls to start filling the paperwork out. Boom, 14. His hand starts moving. He's basically filling out these documents like Light writing in the Death Note. And just flourishing with the pen, just signing away on it. So then he takes the paperwork, puts it on the desk, and this receptionist has no more excuses for us. All right, Mr. Lucas's office is that way. Please do your best to stay out of trouble, and please do not wander in the facility. Please and thank you. We make our way to the 12th floor, where Mr. Anderson's cubicle is located. In the elevator, me and Ice kind of discuss our plans. So Ice is like, all right, I'm a friendly guy. I'm personable. I'll keep him talking. You go through his cubicle, find what you can, and I'll interview some of the other people around and see what they know about the guy, what they know about his son, and that's what we're gonna do. So we approach his cubicle, which is empty, of course, but the cubicle next to it has a middle-aged black man sitting there. He looks up and his eyes widen as we approach. He's like, oh man, not this shit. So the guy asks, he's like, hey, what are you all doing here? And so Ice kind of steps up. Oh, hey man, we're just here on a little bit of inspections. They don't let corporate cops do it, so NCPD is here, and that's why we're here. You want to smoke? And so while he's chatting it out with this guy, Jet is rummaging through Mr. Anderson's desk. The worker tries to look over and he's like, what is your partner doing? Ice ends up having to roll persuasion to persuade this guy not to call his manager. He rolls, boom, 29, plus it explodes. Boom, rolls it again. Another 10 on top of that. So that means it explodes again. Boom, another 7 on top of that. 48. And it was just, oh, it was great. So this guy is chumming it up with Ice. And he's like, well, yeah, no, I'm not going to call my manager, but what are you guys kind of investigating, if you don't mind me asking? And so Ice just gives him some bullshit. Oh, you know, corporate espionage, bombs, stuff like that. So then the guy Ice is talking to starts spilling about how Lucas is actually kind of a member of the Church of Human Love. And he would talk about it all the time at work, even though you're not supposed to, and he had flyers in his desk. And sure enough, Jet opens up his desk and pulls out a bunch of flyers. And also he pulls out a card to an Officer Morgan. He's a probation officer for NCPD. So at that point, we head out the building. Arthur radios into us and he says, hey, meet us at the Copper Arcade and we're going to see if we can find Jack, which is Caleb's friend. Jet fills in the rest of the group about the probation officer's card he found. So Takeda calls to dispatch to get some information regarding Mr. Anderson. So we find out a little bit more. It turns out that Lucas was actually driving under the influence. He was drunk. He was drunk driving. He wasn't at fault. Someone hit him and hit the side that Tanya was on, and she got hurt. And apparently Biotechnica threw some money at NCPD or the judge or whoever to give him a lighter sentence, because he still would have penalized severely for drunk driving, but he didn't get penalized that bad. And this happened about 2 months ago. So then with this information, Takeda says, well, hell, we don't even need to get a warrant. We could actually just go into his place. And then he proceeds to tell us about how probation officers work and shit. And then Chris just says, God damn it. God damn it, Takeda. We're just like, yep, we got him. We got him. He's got to let us in. Because Takeda's over here using meta knowledge. So anyways, we all meet at the Copper Arcade. And we're like, okay, well, we know we can get Lucas whenever we need to. So we're going to kind of put a hold on him for a second. And we're going to see if we can find Jack. Because he is, as far as we know, Caleb's closest associate. He has to know. He's got to have some kind of clue as to where Caleb is. As the 5 officers walk into the Copper Arcade, searching for Jack, that is where we'll end this video. Please like and subscribe for more content, and let me know what you thought about this episode. And as always, this is Golden Buddha telling you to stay enlightened and stay safe.